Hall of Famer and former NFL MVP Kurt Warner put Jayden Daniels on blast this week for regressing compared to what he was in his rookie season. Today on the Commanders Report, we're going to be breaking down his comments, whether I agree or disagree with Kurt Warner here on Jayden Daniels' apparent sophomore slump. But what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comments section. Did Jayden Daniels regress this year after what was really one of the better rookie seasons for a quarterback in NFL history, leading this team to an NFC Championship game last season? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section to kick us off. And now let's get into what Kurt had to say on Twitter, which definitely stirred up a firestorm among Commanders fans, that's to say the least. He says, was just finishing up my tape work this week for the Commanders, and it is really amazing the difference in Jayden Daniels in year two. We often talk about sophomore slumps, and they can definitely be real with teams having a better idea of how to stop you and your offense and forcing you beyond your number one more and more often. The hard part is it just doesn't seem like Jayden Daniels is seeing the field like he did last year, holding the ball, seemingly looking and not throwing to open number one reads, struggling to work through reads. Another example of this game being tough and guys on the other side also getting paid, but it's a bummer because he was so incredible last season. And obviously, Kurt has been taking a lot of heat for this take on Twitter with a bunch of Commanders fans coming to the defense of Jayden Daniels. And by the way, good job on that, Commanders Nation. I'm really proud of you guys. But if we're being objective, okay, Jayden Daniels was not as good this year as he was last season, okay? And I think that is more than fair to point out, okay? I think that is just something where if we're being objective and we look at the performance in the film from last year with Jayden Daniels versus what Jayden Daniels put on film this year, it wasn't as good of a product. And I think we can all, admit that while also acknowledging at the same time that there are a lot of reasons why Jayden Daniels did not put up the same production as he did last season. You guys can take a look if you don't believe me that, the production was worse this year from Jayden. You look at the advanced stats and the metrics that you look at when it comes to evaluating quarterbacks, and he was top 10 in many key areas. He was really good at getting the ball out fast. He was top 5 in average time to throw. He was protecting the football at an elite level. He was just second in turnover-worthy play percentage. All that different stuff culminated in a top 10 passer of the football, where he was 9th in adjusted EPA per play, but he also added on what he brought with his legs, which made him arguably a top 5 quarterback in the National Football League in just his rookie season, leading this team to an NFC Championship game in just his first year in the league. But then this year, you guys can see the transition to, going from mostly top 10 numbers to now you're dipping below the top 20 in many categories. There's still some areas where he did pretty well. He was still top 12 in big-time throw percentage and all those different things, but he certainly wasn't putting up the production, and he certainly wasn't as efficient as he was in his rookie season. And obviously there's a lot of different things that go into these numbers being what they were, but some very key differences, in my opinion, in terms of what the numbers show us, guys, because I just threw a lot of information at you. The adjusted EPA per play, so that's really the efficiency. He went from 9th in the league to 24th. From his first year to his second year, his completion percentage over expectation, so his overall accuracy based on the kinds of throws that he was making, dipped from 10th all the way down to 28th. So the accuracy took a dip this year. The turnover-worthy play percentage, he was an elite guy in terms of protecting the football in his rookie season, second in the league, which is 1.7%. Now he goes all the way down to 19th. And then average time to throw, he was getting the ball out fast. The quick game was a big part of this Commanders offense last year. This year, not so much. He gets down to 21st in average time to throw. And then his average depth of target relatively stayed the same from year to year. But when you're holding the ball for longer and you're not throwing the ball down the field necessarily that much more, certainly that's going to create some issues, put more pressure on you. And, it just wasn't as good of a season for Jayden Daniels this year. And unfortunately, it seems like his season is over with that dislocated elbow. However, like I've been alluding to all video, guys, there's a lot of reasons why Jayden Daniels had that decline in production this year. And, it's not just Jayden Daniels' play in a vacuum. I think we can all agree. Jayden, as just an individual cog in the machine, is one of the best and most talented quarterbacks in the game. But, with kind of the surrounding cast that he had this year, it turned into a less productive product. So we're going to talk about some of the issues that Jayden had to try and overcome this year, and my thoughts on that here in just a second. But first, let's have a word from our sponsor today, at Ridge. Are you tired of your bulky wallet taking up all the space in your pockets? Well, I got the perfect solution for you guys today. This is the Ridge wallet, and its unique, slim, and modern design holds up to 12 cards and is made with premium materials such as aluminum, titanium, and carbon fiber to keep your stuff safe without creating an unflattering bulge in your pocket. With over 100,000 five-star reviews, the quality of the Ridge wallet speaks for itself, and it's also super customizable with over 50 colors, team branding, and AirTag attachments options to customize your Ridge wallet to your own needs. Also, Ridge isn't just about wallets. They also create premium everyday carry essentials like key cases, suitcases, and rings, all built with the same sleek, durable design with premium materials. And no matter what you pick, Ridge has free shipping, a 99-day risk-free trial, and a lifetime warranty on all their products because they are made to last. Now, personally, guys, I just go with just the classic black, but I used to have this really bulky leather wallet that would just create a huge, unflattering bulge in the side of your pants there. That's not what anybody wants. It's uncomfortable, all that different stuff. There's no other room for anything else. But with the Ridge wallet, it's super thin. It carries up to 12 cards, so it can carry all your stuff, and it's super sleek as well. So if you like the modern design, just like I do, for limited time only, our listeners get 10% off at Ridge by using code CHAT at checkout. Just head on over to ridge.com and use code CHAT, and you're all set. After you purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. And a big shout out to Ridge for sponsoring today's edition of the Commanders Report. So the first area that I think kind of regressed in terms of Jayden Daniels' supporting cast this year at the Washington Commanders was his level of pass protection. Now, certainly holding on to the ball for longer has contributed to a higher pressure rate for Jayden Daniels this year, but he went from being the 18th highest pressured quarterback last year with just a pressure rate of 32.7% to nearly 44% pressure rate, which was top 5 among quarterbacks this year. And if you know anything about quarterbacks being pressured, obviously the numbers go down the second that a pressure occurs on an NFL passing down. So, this is certainly something that's going to immediately drop down your production as a quarterback unless Jayden took a big leap in his ability to handle that pressure, which frankly he probably did not. He's always been pretty good at it. He's always been good at getting away from pressure, using his legs, doing that sort of thing. But certainly his scrambling ability as a passer went down because of some of the wide receiver issues we're going to talk about later. But also another area that certainly went down from year to year is the run game support. You guys can see last year the EPA per rush and the success rate for the Commanders' run game was top 5 in both categories last year. They were one of the better rushing teams in the National Football League last year, and Jayden had a lot to do with that. And this year, when you take into account the entire season, it hasn't been a terrible run game. They started off really hot, but they've gotten really cold as of late since week 6. They're 25th in EPA per rush, and they're 15th in success rate. So they've been, frankly, a below-average rushing offense, ever since week 6 after that really fast 5-week start to the season in the run game. And, the offensive line has regressed in that regard as well. I think that offensive line here in Washington has really, taken a step back over the last several weeks, and it really hurt Jayden Daniels up until the point where, unfortunately, he got that elbow injury. And maybe the toughest thing, we talk about pressure and, having your pressure rate increase over 10% from year to year is certainly not ideal. The run game, giving a quarterback a run game is great for making them comfortable, giving them play action passing as an outlet there as well. But, it's really hard for an NFL quarterback, guys, when he has weapons on his offense that aren't good enough to beat man-to-man coverage consistently. And with Terry McLaurin out of the lineup pretty much the entire time Jayden Daniels was in this year, outside of the first 2 games, the teams have just been not afraid to play man coverage versus the Washington Commanders. And, at the beginning of the season, they were trying to catch up because Terry, wasn't at training camp because he wasn't, practicing with the team because he was looking for that new contract. By the time he gets paid, he only has like a week and a half to get ready for week 1 versus the Giants. And, Daniels and Terry were clearly not on the same page the first 2 weeks. It was just very apparent. And then after Jayden Daniels got hurt the first time in that Green Bay Packer game, these two couldn't get on the field again for the rest of the season. So that's just really disappointing. And this was really the bread and butter of the Commanders' offense last year. And it was really the the straw that stirred the drink, because you got Daniels' ability to throw the ball deep with his deep ball accuracy and Terry McLaurin's ability to separate down the field, and frankly to all three levels. And Terry was such a dynamic threat last year, obviously an all-pro caliber guy, and teams were so afraid of him that it opened up opportunities for other people, like in the run game, and it opened up opportunities for De'Ami Brown and Olamide Zaccheaus and the other players that this team let walk in free agency, perhaps foolishly. And, it just hasn't been the same offense this year. Now, it also didn't help that other guys like Deebo Samuel and certainly Noah Brown have been dealing with injuries all throughout this season as well. And you've been asking rookies like Jalen Lane and second-year guys like Luke McCaffrey to step up into kind of big-time roles, and nobody's really stepped up into those roles. And it's very clear that Jayden Daniels just doesn't have a whole lot of trust in those players like he had that trust in Zaccheaus last year. He had that trust in Terry McLaurin because he played a lot of football with them while he was playing with them, and that just wasn't the case this year. He was playing with a lot of guys they just didn't have a lot of chemistry with, and even the guys that were healthy, like Zach Ertz, who he has chemistry with, can't separate versus man. So teams would just play super, super aggressively in man coverage to take away Jayden's first read, especially in the quick game. And, last year the screen game on early downs and the quick game were really extensions of the run game for the Commanders, and it really helped this team be as efficient as they were. But with teams not really being afraid of anybody in this receiving core or at tight end or even at running back, these teams have really pinned their ears back, and they haven't been getting a lot of deep safety help, and they're not backing away. They're playing up in the face of the Commanders, and there's nothing really that they can do from a talent perspective to fix that problem without Terry McLaurin on the field. So obviously that's going to have an impact on Jayden Daniels. And I think the end result is that, if you have a pressure rate at what it was with no run game, and especially, in the second quarter of the season, and then a lack of weapons, you put those three things together, and I don't even think Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen could survive in that kind of situation. And we certainly saw Jayden Daniels not surviving in that situation this year, and I think that's just the reality of the situation. This is a team game at the end of the day. Quarterback play is obviously the thing that kind of differentiates teams and can keep teams in contention. Certainly Jayden's play elevated this team last year, but the way that I like to put it, guys, is that a really good quarterback can make up for maybe one weakness or two weaknesses on a team. Okay, you can't just have a completely terrible team with a bad O-line, bad run game, no weapons, and a terrible defense and expect a quarterback, no matter how good they actually are, to carry you. And I think a big thing that points to this is Marcus Mariota, because you take a look at Mariota's numbers this year when he's been in there, and his numbers, some of them have been better than Jayden's. He's number 2 in the league in big time throw percentage. That's something that he's got going for him. He's bombing the ball down the field at over 8 yards, over 8.5 yards average depth of target. So he's certainly bombing the ball down the field. But you compare Mariota's numbers this year to what he was doing last year, when you can make an argument he was one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the game, period, when he was asked to play in this Commanders offense. First in adjusted EPA per play. His success rate, number 1 in the league, over 50% success rate last year. He was number 1 in completion percentage over expectation. That's 16.5%. That is an astronomical number, ladies and gentlemen. So Marcus Mariota took that big step back with this offense this year because, plain and simply, the surrounding cast is not as good. And a big thing pointing to that is Terry McLaurin's injury, Deebo Samuel's injury, Noah Brown's injury, and frankly, this wide receiver room is just not as good as it was last year. The offensive line is not as good as it was last year. The run game isn't as good as it was last year. And, when all three of those things come crashing down, and you add on top of that a defense that can't stop anybody, so you're always playing from behind, it's just a recipe for disaster for an NFL quarterback. And frankly, I think Adam Peters and Dan Quinn hold a lot more of the blame than people like Kurt Warner want to give to this situation, because Jayden Daniels had no help this year, plain and simply. Didn't have an O-line, didn't have a run game for much of the season. When he did, he actually played very well, right? Those first 5 weeks when he played, they played pretty darn well for most of those games. They started the season 3-2. The second you lost the run game and you didn't have receivers, you didn't have protection, the defense was as bad as it was, Patrick Mahomes couldn't have saved this team, ladies and gentlemen. This season was doomed the second that the Commanders, brought back a lot of their older veterans that they probably should have replaced. They brought in some players that they probably shouldn't have brought in. And, frankly, it was just a poorly managed offseason from Dan Quinn and Adam Peters, who maybe had a little bit too much confidence in some of the players that played for this team last year. And that loyalty certainly led to a regression from their star QB. But in the end, man, I'm not worried about Jayden Daniels. I still think he's a star quarterback. I think he's a bona fide star in this league. I would still consider him a tier 2 quarterback in the game. All right, I wouldn't put him on the level of a Mahomes or an Allen, a Burrow or a Lamar just yet, but I think he's on his way to getting into that tier. Unfortunately, he won't be getting in there this season like I hoped that he would. But he's still very much in that second tier with guys like Matthew Stafford for me and Justin Herbert and, some of these bona fide stars. Now Drake May, I think, is getting into that tier as well. I still consider him a top 8 quarterback in this league very, very easily. What he was able to do last year is still super impressive. And I think his physical skill set is going to keep the Washington Commanders in Super Bowl contention for a very long time. It's just unfortunately not going to be this year. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. What's the % chance that Jayden Daniels wins a title with the Commanders in his career? Put it on a scale of 0, meaning no chance he wins a title. He's done, to 100%, meaning it's definitely going to happen. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. And if you made it to the end of today's show and you're with us here at the Commanders Report throughout this 2025 season, no matter how bad things get, and you're a real one, type those real ones in all caps down there in the comment section so we can give you guys some love down there in the comments. And that'll be it for today's edition of the Commanders Report. Let me know your thoughts on Jayden Daniels down there in the comments section. Let me know your thoughts on Kurt Warner's comments this week as well. And until next time, guys, to the Commanders.